7 years ago, I picked up a fallen girl. I poured all my resources into her, elevating her to the status of a top-tier celebrity, but she repaid my kindness with betrayal. She got involved with her assistant and used the media to trample me beneath her feet. And then, I opened my eyes again, back to 7 years ago, just before I was about to find her. This time, when she looked at me with longing eyes, I turned a blind eye. Instead, I glanced at the cold, melancholic girl beside her, who, despite her current struggles, would one day become a movie queen. I smiled and asked, "Would you like to come with me?" Chapter 1. When I came to inspect the set, I heard murmurs behind me. Someone said, "This must be the heir of the investors, right? He looks like a typical rich second generation. I heard he wants to become a manager. If anyone gets his attention, they'll never have to worry about resources again." I kept a neutral expression and walked forward. As I neared a corner, I slowed my pace. 3, 2, 1. I counted in my mind. As the countdown ended, a figure suddenly rushed out from the other side of the corner, bumping into me in a flurry. She staggered, nearly losing her balance, and fell into me. Her face turned bright red as she held onto my arm and whispered, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bump into you." I looked at her. Her eyes, full of tenderness, were staring intently at me. Sure enough, this was the moment. In my past life, Willow had done the same thing when I came to inspect the set. She'd rushed out from the corner and crashed into me. The close contact made me notice her stunning beauty, skin as delicate as porcelain, lips like cherry blossoms. Her ethereal, almost otherworldly appearance seemed to be made for the screen. Later, Willow became the first artist I signed, and eventually, she became my lover. I used all my resources and spent 7 years elevating Willow to the top. In return, I was met with her betrayal. She not only cheated on me with the assistant, but when I was at my lowest, she used the media to humiliate me. Now, the scene in front of me was exactly like when we first met in my previous life, but this time, I wouldn't repeat the same mistakes. I immediately pushed her away, not even sparing her a glance, and coldly said to the crew, "Is this how disorganized your set always is?" Willow froze, her expression immediately stiffening. I frowned in dissatisfaction and said, "Bumping into me is one thing, but what if you hit the equipment and delayed the schedule? Who will take responsibility for the loss? If everyone is this careless, how are we supposed to finish this production?" The crew members were quick to apologize, bowing repeatedly. "Sorry, Mr. Wong, this is just one of the extras, and she doesn't know the rules. Once today's shoot is over, we'll send her away." Then, they turned to Willow, glaring at her. "Quickly, apologize to Mr. Wong." Willow stared at me in disbelief, clearly not expecting this reaction from me. After a long pause, she reluctantly muttered, "Sorry, I found it laughable. In my previous life, she had lied and betrayed me, destroying my reputation, and never once apologized. Now, just because of a reprimand from others, she was lowering her head to me. It seemed that the best way to keep her in line was to let her remain a nameless nobody." The crew member said, "Mr. Wong, the director is still waiting for you. What do you think?" He looked nervous and gestured for me to move forward. I nodded and said, "Let's go." Just as I was about to step forward, Willow stopped me, unwilling to give up. She bit her lip and said, "Mr. Wong, I know you want to become a manager and are looking for artists. Please, sign me. I'm really good at acting. I promise I won't disappoint you." Her words were blunt, and her tone was filled with confidence. But I remembered how shy and timid Willow had been when I first signed her in my previous life. She was always afraid of saying the wrong thing. What had changed her? Could it be that Willow had also traveled back from 7 years in the future? Chapter 2. I curled my lips into a mocking smile and said, "You, an extra, what gives you the right to say such things?" Willow replied with certainty, "If you saw my performance, you'd definitely give me the chance." Indeed, in my previous life, it was precisely when I saw Willow struggling in the mud during a scene that I was moved by her. But back then, I was just quietly observing from the sidelines. Now, however, it was her who was actively asking for the opportunity. I looked at her indifferently and said, "There are many people who want to get a chance from me, but you're not qualified." Willow looked at me in surprise. Her lips pressed together as if she wanted to say something more, but I had already turned and walked toward the director. "Mr. Wong." The director was very respectful. Stepping aside from the camera, I waved my hand and said, "No need to mind me, just follow your rhythm." It was a coincidence that the scene the director was about to shoot involved Willow's part. Though she was just an extra, her beauty earned her 3 lines, making her the leader among the extras. Noticing my gaze, Willow acted even more passionately. I, however, couldn't be bothered to watch her. Instead, my attention was drawn to a woman behind Willow. This woman had no lines, but her deep eyes were like the moonlight reflected on the vast ocean, a single glance pulling one into the misty darkness of the night. In the muddy struggle scene, She didn't express herself with tears like Willow did. Instead, she used her trembling body and subtle facial expressions to sketch out a character that was unwilling to accept her fate but still yearning for something more. No wonder she was destined to be the future movie queen, Anna. Even as an extra, her acting was already captivating. Unfortunately, in my previous life, after she won the Best Actress award, she fell into depression and tragically committed suicide by jumping off a building. Gradually being forgotten by everyone, I stared at her for quite a while before finally recognizing her and matching her to the image in my memory. I never imagined I would encounter her here in this new life. Cut. At the director's call, the extras in the mud stood up. Willow moved especially quickly, eagerly wiping the mud off her face and looking toward me with anticipation. I only gave her a brief glance and then asked the director, "Do these extras have any other scenes?" The director replied, "No, that's all." He seemed to catch my meaning and asked, "Mr. Wong, is there someone you have your eye on?" I smiled and nodded. "Indeed, there is one." Upon hearing this, the crew began whispering among themselves. Everyone knew that I was with the investors, and with my wealth and status, anyone I chose would not only avoid struggling for resources but also be guaranteed to rise to fame. The director asked, "Who has caught Mr. Wong's eye?" He instructed the extras to line up so I could get a better look. Willow stood closest to me, her head held high, excitement and arrogance impossible to conceal in her eyes. Meanwhile, Anna seemed lost in thought, gazing off into the distance as though the whole situation had nothing to do with her. The director chuckled and said, "Mr. Wong, just take whoever you like. These newcomers are all dreaming of their big break." With the eyes of the crowd fixed on me, I stood up. As I approached Willow, she beamed with hope and stepped forward, saying with a smile, "George, I knew you'd choose me." However, I didn't even spare her a glance as I walked right past her and stopped in front of Anna. I then reached out my finger, pointed at the cold, aloof girl, and said, "You, come with me." The room was immediately filled with astonished murmurs. The gossip, admiration, and doubt from the crowd all rushed toward Anna. Amidst the commotion, Anna's previously sorrowful expression seemed to soften. She bit her lip and, after a long pause, incredulously asked, "You chose me?" "Yes," I answered, smiling at her. In my previous life, we didn't have much interaction, but I still remembered the deep regret I felt when I heard about her death. I had watched the movie she was in. She was not only stunningly beautiful but also an exceptional actress. Every frown, every smile, every gesture of hers seemed to draw from her life experience, effortlessly pulling the audience into her world. A person like that was born to act. After finally reaching the top, why would she choose to take her own life? I felt sorrow for her. I was curious, and most of all, I didn't want to give up on the future movie queen. Willow said, "How is that possible?" She stared at me, eyes wide in disbelief, and rushed to stand in front of me, demanding, "George, how could you choose someone else? You should have chosen me." I frowned and said, "Choose you?" That's when I remembered Willow's presence. Looking at her now, with no emotional filter, all I felt was disgust. I scoffed and said, "Who do you think you are?" Willow's body trembled as if she suddenly realized something. Her face turned pale as she scrutinized every inch of my expression, holding her breath and slowly asking, "George, you've returned." Chapter 3. I calmly looked at Willow, as if I were looking at someone intellectually challenged. The answer was already clear without needing to be spoken. Willow's face gradually twisted, and she yelled out in fury, "George, can you really be so heartless? Are you truly going to completely abandon me?" Just as she was about to go into a hysterical fit, Anna stepped forward and pushed her aside. Her tone was cold, like ice, as she said, "Playing the victim just because you weren't chosen. I truly admire your shamelessness. Your skin must be incredibly thick from all the care you put into it." Willow's eyes bulged with rage, and she raised her hand to slap Anna. But Anna swiftly grabbed her wrist, holding it tightly. The crew, who had already realized what was happening, rushed forward and dragged Willow away. One of them said, "Mr. Wong is with the investors. He's our benefactor. You're just an extra, so don't stand here causing trouble." Willow was escorted out of the set. Before she left, she glared at me with a hateful look, but I no longer cared. Anna, on the other hand, stayed where she was, quietly observing me. Unlike her earlier cold demeanor when confronting Willow, she now looked a bit flustered and unsure. I smiled and said, "Go change, and then come with me." I nodded toward Anna, signaling her to meet me by the car. About 10 minutes later, she arrived. Anna had changed into a one-shoulder blue dress, which highlighted her graceful curves. She had probably just taken a shower, as her long hair was slightly damp, adding a softness to her previously cold aura. Such a unique quality. How had I not noticed it in my previous life? I opened the car door and called out to her, "Get in." However, Anna didn't move. She scrutinized me with a probing gaze, as if trying to figure out my intentions. She asked, Are you really going to sign me? I replied. Of course, she continued. Then what are the conditions? I answered. A 7-year contract. The specific terms can be discussed with the legal team. She shook her head slightly and said, I'm not asking about the contract conditions. Anna paused, as if thinking about how to phrase her question, and then, in a low voice, asked, Are there any other conditions? Now I understood what she meant. I couldn't help but smile. Do you think I'm signing you because I want something from your body? It wasn't hard to understand why she might think that. This was the entertainment industry, where everything was transactional. To gain something, one had to give something in return. Money and favors were common exchanges, and Anna certainly had the kind of face that could command such attention. I reassured her. Don't worry. Aside from acting, I won't force you into anything you don't want to do. As soon as I said that, Anna visibly relaxed. There were only the two of us here, and if I had an ulterior motive, there was no need for me to hide it or deceive her. Yet she still had a question. So, if you've chosen me, what is it that you want from me? I was momentarily stunned. This was something Willow had never asked. She had only ever demanded things from me, always making it clear what she wanted. But this girl before me seemed more concerned with my needs. She was thinking about how to reciprocate the kindness she had yet to receive. My heart softened as I looked into her eyes, and I said seriously, just act well, live well, that's all. Anna was taken aback. She probably hadn't expected such a simple answer. After a moment, she finally relaxed, and for the first time since we'd met, a smile appeared on her face. She smiled gently and said, Then it's a deal. I'll be your artist, my manager. Chapter 4. Anna signed a 7-year contract with me. After the signing, the first resource I offered her was the lead role in a low-budget campus drama. This was the same resource I had given to Willow in my previous life, and she had gained popularity from it, earning the title of Campus Goddess. Although the budget was small, the drama became a surprise hit during the summer season, launching the careers of several lead actors, especially the female lead, cold and reserved in personality. Anna fit the role even better than Willow. Anna nervously asked, You're giving me the lead role right away. What if I mess it up? I smiled and reassured her. You're more than capable of handling this role. This is just the beginning. Your stage is much higher than this. Anna suddenly lifted her gaze, and her eyes, like two small flames in the dark, seemed to burn with intensity. After a long pause, she seriously replied, Okay, I won't disappoint you. We rushed to prepare for the filming. However, on the day of the shoot, I was caught off guard. The role of the second female lead had been changed to Willow. Chapter 5. Mr. Wong. We all know that your father is the largest investor in this drama, but Mr. Luis is the second largest investor, and he insisted on changing the second female lead. The producer explained to me. As soon as I heard that, I understood the situation. Luis was a businessman in his late 40s or early 50s. In my previous life, when Willow was somewhat famous, Luis had made an offer to her. Willow had laughed about it, saying, How could I possibly care about him when I have George? That old man is disgusting, greasy and self-important, thinking that just because you give him a smile, people will like him. I never expected that in this life. After I rejected her, she would take the initiative to approach Luis. She must have offered something in return to secure the second female lead role. It was truly revolting, but the shoot had already started. If we changed the cast now, the financial loss would be minimal, but what worried me was that Willow would use the media to play the victim and smear Anna. Moreover, Luis had worked with my father before, and I didn't want to offend him just for Willow's sake. Suppressing the anger rising inside me, I accompanied Anna to the set. As soon as we got out of the car, the director called Anna away. I decided to wander around the set by myself. Suddenly, someone patted me on the back. I laughed. Back so soon. I turned around, but the words caught in my throat. Willow was standing there, smiling at me and shaking a cup of coffee. My expression grew cold, and I asked, Is there something you need? She tilted her head, saying, I bought hot drinks for everyone on set. This coffee is for you. I remember you used to love espresso. She extended her arm to hand me the cup. I didn't take it, and she pouted, acting cute. Come on, try it. You used to love this brand. It won't be around in 7 years. I couldn't take it anymore and slapped the coffee out of her hand. Furiously, I snapped. Willow, stop trying to get close to me. Do you think we're close? Willow, however, wasn't angry at all. She blinked, speaking in a tone that was almost coquettish. Why are you so angry? You're just doing this to spite me, aren't you? You signed someone else on purpose, right? I was speechless. I sneered. Willow, you're still as clueless as ever. Do you think you can get famous just by selling yourself to Luis? The color drained from Willow's face, but in an instant, she regained her composure and began to play the victim. It's all because of you. It's because you didn't sign me that I was forced to go to someone else. George, why do you have to treat me this way? I know you're mad at me, But that was all in the past. Why don't we just start over? To be honest, the one I've always loved is you. She spoke as though she were the victim, implying that it was me who had pushed her into someone else's bed. It was utterly absurd. I laughed and said, Willow, stop with these useless tricks. Let's be honest. You came to me with all this pretentious talk just to ask me to cast you as the lead, right? I mercilessly exposed her false front, looking down on her with disdain. I used to think you and that assistant were in love, but turns out, before he even showed up, you were already in the arms of an old man. Do whatever you want with yourself. I don't care, but if you keep pestering me, I'll make sure you don't even get the second female role. I turned to walk away, but Willow suddenly screamed in hysteria. Do you think Anna is such a good person? Do you know her past? I'll tell you, her dad is a rapist, and her mom is a sex worker. Her dad raped her mom, and when he went to prison, he died there. Her mom, unable to care for her, wanted to throw her away, wishing she could just leave her to die. Someone who grew up in such an environment, how could she be a good girl? She might be rotten to the core. I stopped in my tracks and turned to look at her coldly. Willow froze under my gaze. Lowering her voice, she bit her lip and said, George, Anna has psychological issues. She'll probably commit suicide one day. You signed her, and in the end, it'll all be for nothing. I was burning with fury. Before she could finish, I kicked her to the ground. Willow collapsed onto the floor, looking up at me with a wounded expression. George, you actually kicked me. I smiled coldly, my voice full of malice. None of my people get to be criticized by you. If you don't get it, not only will I kick you, but I'll also dance on your grave. Willow's eyes were filled with shock. It was probably only then that she finally woke up from her fantasy of trying to win me back. In the past, I had probably been a classic simp, letting her treat me however she wanted, thinking that no matter what she did, I would always come back to her. But I was no longer the old me. After experiencing betrayal in love, a failed career, and public criticism, I no longer trusted anyone easily, especially not Willow, who had hurt me the most. At last, Willow realized the reality. Slowly, she stood up and walked away, dejected. I turned my head, and there, not far away, was Anna, leaning against a withered sycamore tree. Her pale face looked like a fallen leaf in late autumn, fragile and fading. Chapter 6. My heart clenched in pain. Previously, I had thought that Anna's suicide attempt was due to some incident in her life, and that if I changed the trajectory of her life, the suicide wouldn't happen. But I hadn't expected that she had such a broken past. I walked toward Anna, looking at her quietly standing in the shadows, and an impulse suddenly surged within me. I wanted to hug her, but just as I extended my hand, Anna spoke first. Her voice trembled. I didn't tell you before because I was afraid you'd distance yourself from me. Now that you know everything, if you want to cancel the contract, I agree. Her voice was barely audible, like a mosquito's buzz, and the hand at her side was tightly clenched, trembling slightly. I asked, cancel the contract? Who said anything about canceling it? Anna looked up in surprise. You don't mind? I frowned. I'm your manager. I have to be responsible for you. I thought for a moment and continued. Since Willow was able to dig up this information, it means others can find it too. We need to quickly create a cleaner background for you. 2 sparks of light appeared in Anna's dimmed eyes, but her body still trembled slightly. I continued to reassure her. Of course, this doesn't mean your past is shameful. On the contrary, I think you've done an excellent job growing up in such an environment. That's why I'm going to create a new background for you. I just don't want you to bear any more criticism. Do you understand? Anna didn't answer. Instead, she just quietly stared at me, her eyes growing redder. I asked, why are you staring at me like that? Is there something on my face? Just as I was about to wipe my face, Anna suddenly threw herself into my arms. The sudden embrace caught me off guard, but I still reached out and gently patted her back to comfort her. I only wanted to say something simple. I'm here, Anna whispered in my ear. Thank you, George, I corrected her. You should call me boss. Anna didn't respond. I continued. This is your first leading role. Perform well and avoid causing trouble. The right path is for me to make a huge profit from you. Even if Willow provokes you later, just ignore her. Can you do that? She replied. Yes, I can. There was a hint of a smile in Anna's tone, her voice clear and pure, like a feather brushing against my heart. She said, you signed me, and I'll make sure you never regret it. George, I replied. I've told you before, call me boss, she answered. Okay, George. Chapter 7. Anna lived up to her word. Throughout the entire filming process, she focused solely on acting and never caused any trouble. I heard that Willow had tried to provoke her multiple times, but Anna completely ignored her, not even bothering to look in her direction. The crew, always quick to flatter those above them and put down those below, surrounded Anna, while they coldly ignored Willow, the second female lead. Nothing is more painful than being ignored. Anna's dedication also paid off. Just like in the past life, the show became a surprise hit in the summer season. With its viewership climbing steadily, Anna's fan base grew wildly, with netizens praising her for her cool, reserved demeanor and her immersive acting skills. Her influence surpassed Willow's in the previous life. As Anna's schedule became busier, I found myself overwhelmed and decided to hire her an assistant. Anna was somewhat reluctant. She furrowed her brows and said, "Can't it just be the two of us? I don't need an assistant. I can take care of myself." I coaxed her. "Be good. Sometimes I'm stretched thin and need more time to rest." Anna didn't say anything more, silently agreeing to the idea of hiring an assistant. Little did I know, this decision would bring an old acquaintance back into the picture. A young man named Makoto came in for an interview. He was none other than Willow's assistant in the previous life, and also the person Willow had an affair with. Makoto had written Anna a love poem, ardently expressing his feelings for her. The lines in the poem were almost identical to the ones he had written for Willow in the past. One of the lines read, "Others may be captivated by your beauty on stage, but I see the true you beneath your delicate makeup. Compared to a body that will eventually wither, I care more about whether your soul is truly happy." It's laughable that Willow had once been so moved by this poem. Apparently, the poem wasn't just written for her, it was a blanket throw. Makoto had used sweet words and a warm, nice guy persona to win Willow's heart. The two of them had been secretly seeing each other behind my back, unwilling to give up the resources I provided, yet also sneaking around as an illicit couple, until one day, Wang's group suffered a major investment failure and declared bankruptcy. Makoto immediately convinced Willow to ditch me and withdraw from the film company we had co-founded. This move nearly brought me to ruin. To salvage her reputation, Willow poured all the blame on me, casting me as the villain. At that time, I had no resources left to fight back, and I had to endure the unjust insults from Willow's fans. Everything in my life fell apart. In the previous life, my fall from grace had been directly linked to Makoto. Even though in this life, I had gotten involved in my father's company to prevent such mistakes, Makoto's appearance still made me uneasy. I wondered, how would Anna feel about him? I quietly waited outside the interview room. By the final round, the remaining candidates were all to be chosen by Anna. I heard Makoto's magnetic voice inside. "Anna, did you read the letter I wrote you?" Anna's voice was neutral as she replied, "Yes, thank you for your affection." Makoto sounded eager. "Then let me be by your side. Let me protect and care for you." Anna didn't speak for a moment. I held my breath in the silence, feeling a slight sweat on my palms. Then, I heard Anna's response. Her voice was cold as she said, "If this letter is from a fan, I appreciate it. But as a member of the team, this kind of behavior is inappropriate. Personal feelings shouldn't be mixed with work. Don't you know that?" Makoto, embarrassed, quickly tried to backpedal. "But my feelings for you are sincere, as the sun and moon can witness. I'm even willing to do anything for you. If you give me a chance, I'll prove it to you." His voice was earnest, but Anna rolled her eyes and said, "Makoto, save your flowery words. The more you say you like me, the more I'll reject you, because I already have someone I like, and he's in our team." My heart skipped a beat, then started pounding wildly. "Our team? Isn't it just Anna and me? She likes me. When did that happen?" I forced myself to calm down. After Willow's betrayal, I needed to be more cautious with emotions. Besides, Anna was my artist. Business had to come first. I rubbed my temples and decided to act like I hadn't heard anything. But when Makoto left, I had someone send him off and, somewhat intentionally, hinted to him. Willow's studio is also hiring assistants. Let's see how this couple, so deep in love, would turn out in the end. Chapter 8. 3 days later, I got the news that Makoto had successfully become Willow's assistant. As for Anna, she chose her best friend as her assistant. Then followed a period of intense work. Anna had countless offers, and I helped her pick a few big hits from the past that had both solid viewership and good reviews, helping her secure her footing in the industry. Anna was someone who had a genuine passion for acting. She didn't take on trashy roles just for the paycheck. Whether it was a lead or a supporting role, she threw herself fully into it. Although she didn't rise to fame as quickly as the traffic stars, her reputation grew steadily. Willow, like me, had also returned from 7 years in the past, so she knew which projects would be successful. But just like in the previous life, she chose to do light-hearted youth idol dramas, where she wouldn't even memorize her lines, simply trying to make quick money. In the past, I had suggested she try transitioning into more serious acting, but Willow threw a tantrum, accusing me of not believing in her charm. Nevertheless, with Louise supporting her and the idol-like aura she had built in the past, she still gained quite a bit of popularity and saw moderate success. The two of them had different paths when it came to acting, so it wasn't likely they'd fight for the same resources. That was until the movie Withered Leaves began casting. This was the film that Anna won Best Actress for in the past life. Withered Leaves was a project by the famous director David. In the previous life, David had held nationwide auditions to find the right female lead and was even willing to work with newcomers. This was how Anna, who was relatively unknown, got the opportunity and eventually landed the lead role after several rounds of selection. But in reality, before the nationwide auditions, David had held several closed auditions for established actors. It was only after failing to find a satisfactory candidate that he widened the search to newcomers. Now, the actors were once again gathering for the final round of auditions. Top directors were casting, and everyone was doing their best to stand out. I also sent Anna's information over and successfully received an audition invitation. What I didn't expect was that on the day of the audition, Willow showed up, and she was accompanied by her assistant, Makoto. Although they were standing at a distance, the flirtatious looks they exchanged were obvious. They were already involved with each other. Willow sneered. "George, you're really ruthless. You know Anna is going to suffer in this role, yet you still send her for the audition." Her smile was full of disdain, though it seemed like she was addressing me. Her words were clearly meant to unsettle Anna. Without hesitation, I mocked her. "Which drain wasn't properly sealed? And now you're crawling back out. You only have one face. Shouldn't you save some of it?" Anna chuckled beside me. Makoto, who had been silent until then, immediately stepped forward to play the knight in shining armor, reprimanding me. "Shut up. If you don't know how to speak, don't speak at all. Willow has nothing to be ashamed of. Her face has been certified as a national goddess by millions of fans." His words made my skin crawl. I responded. "Doesn't that make you embarrassed to say out loud?" I paused, then mocked. "If I'm not mistaken, you applied to be Anna's assistant at first, right? And you even wrote her a little love poem." I was really touched by it. Willow's gaze immediately turned cold. She asked Makoto, "You wrote Anna a love poem too? Didn't you say you only wrote one for me?" Makoto looked deeply into her eyes and replied, "Willow, what's wrong with you? I love you so much, yet you'd rather believe them than me." I was getting more and more disgusted by the situation. I interrupted. "So, what about this?" I took out my phone and showed them the picture of the poem Makoto had written. Each word was handwritten. Willow immediately recognized the handwriting. Her face turned red with anger, and she snapped. "Makoto, you lied to me." Her face was flushed with fury, and it seemed like she was about to lose control. Makoto's lips quivered as he anxiously tried to explain. "Willow, I'll explain everything to you when we get back. But don't forget, we came here for a real reason." Willow was jolted back to reality by the reminder. She restrained her emotions and reluctantly looked at Anna, saying, "Anna, I'm just trying to warn you. You should give up on this role. If you take it, you'll be finished." Her words were exaggerated, as if for dramatic effect, waiting for Anna to ask more. But Anna didn't take the bait. She wasn't curious at all. Instead, she replied indifferently, "Don't worry about it. I can make my own judgments." Willow tried to say more, but just then, the director's assistant came out with the audition scripts for everyone. The assistant said, "Each of you will receive different scenes, so be sure to keep your scripts safe." I saw that Anna had received her script, so I stepped outside to take a call, telling her to prepare calmly. When I came back, however, I noticed that Anna's expression seemed off. I asked, "Is there a problem?" Anna frowned slightly and said, "I think my script was swapped." I was startled and quickly took the script from her to check. Having seen Withered Leaves in the past, I was familiar with the lines, so it was easy for me to tell that this was not the script for the movie. It was a poorly written comedy. I asked, "Tell me, what happened after I left?" Anna replied, "I hadn't had time to read the script when Willow bumped into me." The script fell to the ground, and it was Makoto who picked it up and handed it back to me. I said, "So you're saying Makoto swapped your script?" I stood up in anger. "Then let's go take it back from him." Anna held me back, trying to calm me down. I already asked them, and they denied it. "Besides, everyone has different scripts, so we can't be sure," I said. "Then let's have the director's assistant give you a new one." She shook her head. "It's not possible. Director David values the attitude toward acting above all else. If I make a mistake right after receiving the script, the first impression will be ruined, and no matter how well I perform, it won't be enough to recover from it." I asked, "So what do we do now? You haven't even seen the script. How are you supposed to perform?" I was anxious for Anna. I had thought that since she had already won the role of the female lead in Withered Leaves in the past life, there wouldn't be any problems this time. I never expected Willow and Makoto to be so persistent, causing trouble like this. Before Anna could respond, the director's assistant came out and called, "The first one for the audition. Anna, please come over." I was so anxious I could feel sweat on my forehead. "So soon?" Anna lightly squeezed my arm and said, "Don't worry, I've got it handled." Chapter 9. Anna entered the audition room. I couldn't make sense of it. How could she, who hadn't even seen the correct script, have any way of handling it? She wouldn't just make things up, would she? Or maybe, the audition script wasn't Withered Leaves at all. And the director was just trying to pick actors through a ridiculous comedy. I clung to a shred of hope, silently praying, but Willow wouldn't let me have peace. She walked over to my side, curling her lips into a cold smirk and said, "George, you look pretty nervous. Is Anna not prepared?" I noticed she barely glanced at the script earlier. Did she give up in advance? What a shame. Withered Leaves is such a great script. Even just reading the scene made me emotional. How could Anna not even look at it? I froze. So, the audition content really was Withered Leaves. That little bit of hope I had left evaporated completely. "Willow," I said slowly, each word sharp, "you've always stuck to youth idol dramas. So how come you're interested in Withered Leaves? A serious art film? Are you deliberately trying to cause trouble?" Willow laughed so wildly that I thought she might fall apart. She replied, "Yeah, even if I can't play the role, I won't let Anna have her way. Wasn't the reason you chose her because she was the future best actress? Now that she's missed this film, she's lost that title. What does your choice mean now?" Her malicious intent was clear as day. The script had definitely been swapped by her and Makoto, no doubt about it. I sneered. "How foolish. You think Anna is just a pretty face like you. She won that Best Actress award not by accident, but by her acting skills. Even without Withered Leaves, she'll find other roles. Besides, who gave you the right to decide she's already missed Withered Leaves?" Before Willow could respond, the door to the audition room opened, but it wasn't Anna who walked out. It was the director's assistant. He said, "Everyone, sorry to keep you waiting. I have an announcement to make." The assistant raised his voice, his tone apologetic but filled with excitement as he said, "Director David has found the actress he was looking for. No need for the others to continue the audition. Feel free to head back. We apologize for any inconvenience." The moment those words left his mouth, the room exploded in chatter. People whispered, "Does that mean we won't be seeing anyone else? Is there some sort of insider story behind this? Do you think Anna got the role?" That would be expected. With someone like Director David, there's no need for any insider gossip. He has full authority to make the decision himself. Wow. She must have performed so well for him to make the decision right away. Willow and Makoto, who had been so full of arrogance just moments ago, turned pale as paper. I couldn't help but smile, feeling a sense of satisfaction amidst the murmurs around me. It wasn't until a long while later that Anna emerged from the audition room, walking alongside Director David. The admiration the director had for her was apparent. He said, "I thought finding the right actress for the female lead would be the hardest part. I was prepared for a long battle, but after seeing Anna's performance, I knew I'd found her." The director looked at me with a smile, extending his hand. "You must be Anna's agent, right? If everything looks good, we can finalize the contract this week." I held back my grin, replying politely, "Of course, no problem. Thank you for recognizing Anna." Director David personally escorted Anna and me out, and we spent the time chatting about the script and the characters. Anna responded with ease, impressing me further. Behind us, Willow and Makoto stood dumbfounded, racking their brains, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. Chapter 10. I couldn't make sense of it either. So as soon as we got in the car, I couldn't wait to ask Anna, "You didn't even see the script. How did you pull off the audition?" Anna tilted her head with a haughty air, a slight ripple passing through her cool expression as her cheeks flushed just a little from her smile. She replied, "Who said I didn't see the script? I just didn't look at it earlier." I thought back to how Anna, the moment she opened the script, immediately knew that this wasn't Withered Leaves. That meant she already knew what the lines from Withered Leaves should look like. I asked, "Did you get the script in advance?" Anna shook her head. "No." My heart skipped a beat, and another bold theory surfaced in my mind, but I wasn't sure how to express it. Anna seemed to read my thoughts. Slowly, she spoke. "Yes, George, you guessed it. I'm also from the future." I felt as if I had been struck by lightning. No wonder Willow had kept insisting that Anna would die if she acted in Withered Leaves. But Anna hadn't shown the slightest curiosity. It was because she had experienced it firsthand, which is why she remained so calm. But why did she end up committing suicide in her past life? Anna took a deep breath, her voice sinking into the depths of the past as she began. "You've already heard from Willow about my background. My mother always hated me. I've lost count of the number of times she tried to kill me and failed. When I grew older, she didn't try to kill me anymore, but she was always cold, always full of hatred. At that time, I thought it was because I wasn't good enough or successful enough. That's why she despised me. I thought, if one day I could become her pride, maybe she'd finally look at me. So, I started from being a small supporting character, and eventually, I got the chance for Withered Leaves. But when I won the Best Actress award and finally had flowers and applause, I went back to see her, only to hear her say, 'Go die.' In that moment, all my beliefs collapsed. I realized that no matter how hard I tried, I didn't deserve even a little bit of love. I had nothing to rely on in this world, and nothing worth holding on to. Depression hit, and I jumped off a building. But, unexpectedly, Fate gave me a second chance. The day you came to the set, I had planned to finish that scene and then leave the entertainment industry forever. But you chose me. That never happened in my past life. I realized something had changed. You trust me, support me, and stand by me unconditionally. There were times I thought you'd abandon me like everyone else, but you didn't. George, you reignited my passion for life. I won't feel hopeless anymore. How could I leave this world when you're here with me? My heart stirred. Each of her words struck deep within me. To be trusted and to trust someone else, what a beautiful thing that is. I once thought that being given a second chance was just to correct mistakes and get back on track. Now I realize that it's a chance to gather up the broken pieces of myself and make them whole. Learning to cherish myself in the process of being reborn. For both me and Anna. George, I have one request. Anna suddenly spoke. I asked, what is it? Anna's eyes were clear, her peach blossom gaze silently looking at me. She said, in my past life, I won the Best Actress trophy, but I was always alone. This time, could you please be there for me off stage? In this new life, I want to experience something different. I smiled and answered without hesitation. Of course, I'll be with you. In every moment you need me. Chapter 11. Anna smoothly joined the set of Withered Leaves and the intense filming began. I wasn't idly waiting either. Willow and Makoto had thrown such a big obstacle in my way. How could I just let it slide? I had already gathered enough evidence of their messy affairs, and I found a reliable middleman to pass the information on to Luis. Luis wasn't like me, soft-hearted and lenient. He had always treated Willow, this internet star, as a mere plaything, someone who was obedient and easy to manipulate. But when she dared to cheat under his nose, he was never going to let it slide. Luis immediately pulled all his investments from her, and the endorsement deals were cancelled one by one. Soon after, the scandal broke. Willow was being kept by a wealthy sponsor, and her affair with her assistant was exposed. Her idol image shattered overnight, and the internet was flooded with criticism. I then took advantage of the situation and exposed the surveillance footage of Willow and Makoto switching Anna's script. This wasn't just a scandal anymore, it was a matter of professionalism and ethical standards. Fans who had once defended her with claims of, my sister was forced into the industry, quickly fell silent, scattering in all directions. Had Willow focused on acting and honed her skills, maybe she could have weathered the storm after a period of silence and still found work. But Willow relied entirely on her fame, and once her fanbase collapsed, she was worthless. Later, I heard that Willow and Makoto, the so-called true love couple, had broken up. I wasn't the least bit surprised. People like Willow, who only cared about using men to climb the ladder, never satisfied with the attention of the weak once they've made it, would never find peace. When she hit rock bottom, what use did she have to Makoto? He cast her aside like yesterday's trash. But now that Makoto had betrayed Luis, I doubted he would have a happy ending. Wong, Willow is here again. She hopes to meet with you, my subordinate told me. I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, looking at the desolate and haggard figure below, and replied coldly, I won't meet her. She can come as many times as she wants. I won't meet her. I can guess exactly what she wants to say with my little finger. If she dares to come again, just have the security throw her out. My subordinate received the order and immediately went downstairs to escort Willow out. Willow refused to leave, so 2 security guards were called to physically remove her, and she threatened to call the police. The crowd gathered around, gossiping and pointing fingers, until Willow finally relented and left in a hurry. After that, she never came back and disappeared from the entertainment industry entirely. The view outside the window was finally clean. Chapter 12. As winter turned to spring, Withered Leaves was successfully released, though it was an art film, with director David's name attached. The movie performed well at the box office. As word of mouth spread, ticket sales soared, and it became a massive success. Everyone who saw the film was deeply impressed by Anna's performance. The way she combined fragility and unyieldingness in her character left audiences entranced, unable to pull themselves away. Withered Leaves made Anna a household name, but she didn't let the fame consume her. She continued living a simple life, just like before. The only change was that her visits to my place became more frequent. She'd say, now a lot of people like me, and several other actors are chasing after me. George, what should I do? Then, a little upset, she'd add, if you don't stop me, I might just agree to one of them. On her days off, she liked to come over to my house, playing games, chatting, watching movies, or simply sitting together in silence, content with each other's presence. I began to get used to a world where she was always there. 3 months after Withered Leaves premiered, Anna, just like in her past life, won the Best Actress award. On the stage, under the spotlight, holding the trophy, she gazed at me with teary eyes and confessed, this trophy, I want to dedicate it to the most important person in my life. My past life was like the withered leaves in Withered Leaves, dry and falling apart. But when he came into my life, the leaves started to rustle again, bringing new life. George, I love you. I'm willing to sign my life over to you." The applause from the audience was deafening. She, a young woman, publicly declared her love for me in front of everyone. No backup plan, no fear of rejection. But how could I possibly turn her down? Through the days of being with her, she had already become a precious part of my life. Amidst the crowd's cheers, I walked onto the stage, joining her to raise the trophy. Behind us, the theme song of Withered Leaves played, reflecting the journey we had walked together. My withered leaves were meant to be blown away by the wind, but I remained at the foot of the tree, hoping to see spring once more. I know, I will meet you again in the next spring, buried deep in the soil. I will plant my love. As frost and snow fall, winter passes, and spring arrives. Withered Leaves has finally waited for the spring it yearned for, and you are the most beautiful stroke of warmth in the spring sunlight.